Hi everyone, welcome to the 44th episode of the Zicast. As always, I'm your host Ryan Ziax, and today I'm joined by filmmaker Professor Stephen Bisaccia.
What's going on?
Yeah, and I'd like to shout out episode 36 guest Joe Flynn for stepping into TD today. So Professor, I know that you're a Zicast enjoyer, so I appreciate you being on here. It's been a long wait, and I'm really excited to get into things and learn more about you. So if you don't mind telling us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. How do I answer this? Within what context?
Just give us like a brief overview, like where you're from, what you studied, what you do.
Okay. So I grew up in Derby, Connecticut, which is a super small town. Actually, the smallest town in Connecticut area-wise. It's pretty densely populated, though, within that space. But, I grew up there in a family that has always been very into the arts, music, literature, movies. I gravitated to that part of my life and that influence from my family a little later in life. Growing up, when I was like a kid, sports was more so my thing. I played baseball and basketball growing up, and then upon graduating, I came here as a commuter, started school in 2015 here, and I was very overwhelmed from moving from such a tiny space into a medium-sized university where suddenly you're no longer a big fish in a small pond. There's an anonymity that made me a little existentially, scared, I guess. And I came in as a journalism major thinking, because sports was still kind of like my thing at the time. But yeah, that first year was kind of rough. Like I feel like I lost a lot of my social skills. Like I was just scared to talk to people and get to know people in a foreign land, even though it was only 25 minutes away. I'm, not a particularly well-traveled person. But something sort of clicked heading into my sophomore year, where I had grown up making movies with my brothers at our local library. My oldest brother actually started the program there when he was in high school. And, even though like when I was in high school, I was kind of, I presented more as like the guy who was interested in sports and like wanted that to be my personality. But I had this like creative side of me, like with my family and making those movies and that film program that, started to emerge. And I made the switch to the film program, and it, I feel like it just kind of recalibrated my interests and what I wanted to do with my life and how I could navigate a space where I was, more anonymous, a smaller cog in a larger machine, that it all just felt a lot more recalibrated, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it, once I had switched into the major of film here. And then I was off to the races. I took schooling and being a film major very seriously. It was very rewarding and very fun. And I guess I haven't looked back. I graduated in 2019, and I've continued to do a myriad of film projects, from music videos to short films to weddings to everything. And now I teach here as an adjunct from time to time, and it feels like a really great full circle moment to, be part of a community that has given me so much and try to reciprocate that in whatever capacity, and continue building, different skill sets too. Being a professor can challenge you in certain ways that a film set can't. And it's been really rewarding, and I'm very happy that I found a lane for myself. And I think the film program and switching my major into that was really the key for all of that to start taking shape.
Exactly. You really gave us the overview of all the things we're going to get into here for your time in here at Quinnipiac, and then how that led into you becoming a professor. It's always great to have a fellow Connecticutter on this podcast. Of course, I'm from North Haven. You're from Derby.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's very interesting when you brought up really early on your family being into the arts and literature. You're always I noticed this as an English major, you have a very extensive vocabulary that comes out a lot that really helps sell things. Of course, we talk a lot in class about like pitching projects and selling projects, and you have that like very good verbiage. It really brings things home. And I'm really excited to kind of get into your experience here and how that kind of led you into being professor. So for the first topic, I'd like to ask you the difference in working in a place like Connecticut over a big production hub.
Yeah. I think one of the main differences is just the how do I put this? I mean, it's not like I've spent a ton of time in LA to like really know this for certain. But I think there is a certain level of I'm trying to find the words for it. It's so ironic. You were just telling me how well versed I am, and now I can't find the words.
It's more scarce here.
It is. But sometimes that's a benefit. I think again, there's this element of being a small fish in a big pond when you're in LA, or when you're in a production, hub of a city like Atlanta too, or something like that, or New York City. There's a million of you out there. Certain people, I think, can benefit from working in that space, especially if you have found a niche or a skill set that you really love, and you're willing to work your way up through elevating into the camera department on sets, being a PA, then a camera PA, then a second AC, then a first AC, then there are paths for you if you want to narrow down. And I think that works for some people. But when you're in when you're in Connecticut, it's a good idea to try to be a Swiss Army knife of sorts, to learn about cameras, learn about lights, learn about sound, because a lot of times you're going to find that you need to do a lot of that yourself. And there's a pride that I think comes with that, for me at least. And I think no longer should that be like looked down upon, like you're not doing it the right way, because of how gear has become. I mean, gear is still expensive, but it's accessible in a way that it never really was before. So you can make really cool stuff on a smaller budget or with less people than ever before. So I think there are opportunities to really make a name for yourself and, find your artistic voice in Connecticut or in smaller spaces that sometimes is easier than being in LA, where again there's a million of you and you got to cut through the noise. Yeah, so I mean there are pros and cons, but I certainly I enjoy taking a larger sort of responsibility on making projects and doing multiple things and growing a diverse skill set as a result.
That's a great way of framing it, pun intended, that in Connecticut you have to know more things because there's going to be less of you. But something Joe and I have talked about is like honing in on the one skills. And I feel like in a place like LA, you'd have to hone in on like one skill that and be good at one skill to get a job. But in Connecticut or places like Connecticut, you would have to kind of do a lot of things. Like, have you noticed that if you've been on larger sets where you're kind of just having one job versus like maybe a smaller set where you have to do more things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the proof is in, the types of careers people form for themselves depending on where they live. I have people that graduated in my class or a year or two prior that are moving out to LA, and they have some really cool jobs that are, working for Marvel as like an assistant editor, and so it's just a different path. It's just, it's a different path, and there's no good way or no bad way. But I've just found personally for me that I like staying local. I like leveraging the network of filmmakers that I've met around here. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a sense of pride that you have when you come from a smaller state with less opportunity, at least on a larger scale, to make it happen for yourself. And I think it's more rewarding too, like, yeah, make it writing and directing like your own short films. I mean, obviously you could do that in Los Angeles as well, but yeah, I don't know. There's a certain level of pride you have when you do it in your own home state.
It's more of a challenge.
Yeah.
And you can, like you said, kind of stand out more when, like, you mentioned, like, being a big fish in a small pond sometimes. Like, you could kind of feel like that if you're in a smaller hub versus, like, those bigger hubs. And it's great that you brought up, like, your alumni friends doing crazy things in LA, like being in QU in LA. I see firsthand, like, just what the Quinnipiac film programs can take you to, which leads us well into our next topic, which is how the film program has evolved since you were a student now being in it as a professor.
Yeah. I don't have the strongest perspective on that, only because I am an adjunct and I'm not here, every day to like really speak on that with a full degree of confidence. But I mean, one thing that I've definitely noticed is the gear has improved. When I was at school here, the gear was still good, like especially when you compare it to other universities that have a similar tuition price. But yeah, in the time since I've graduated, you guys have A7 IIIs that you're using, and then for your thesis films when those come around, I know you're an English major, so you're not you don't have one to do, but have you worked on one?
I've been a PA through the majority of a production of one, and I've been an extra on another, and I hope to help Joe and his group or any others if I can.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of really cool cameras that you guys have at your disposal for those thesis films. Great lenses. The lighting has improved significantly. I think Quinnipiac has been very forward-thinking in recognizing the how gear is contributing to this, what I like to think of as an indie renaissance, where the power is given to like film students in a way that it never has been before, and they've stocked up on efficient lights that don't burn your hands, that are very color accurate. And there are ways of softening them that are easier than in years past. It's easier to achieve a really nice product than it was when I was in school from a gear perspective. So yeah, I mean, I think that's been a huge improvement. I mean, one thing that I think has remained a constant though from when I was in school and when you guys were in school is the faculty being really awesome. A lot of the same professors that you guys have, I had, and they were invaluable to, pick the brains of, and I still keep in contact with a bunch of them. It's why I'm here. So yeah, I think the faculty, and you know, I do have a perspective of, you know, I've worked at other universities since graduating, whether it was, you know, a full-time gig or like freelancing, making video content for them. So I've seen other communications programs and film programs, some of which are rated very highly, and you know, the lists that come out and stuff. Quinnipiac's got it. Like,
yeah.
like they kind of, you know, and I think that's another thing that I want to talk about a little bit. I don't know if it, and I would love to hear your perspectives on this.
Of course.
But when I was a student, by the time I was a senior, even though I was a commuter, I had sort of embedded myself in the film community to a certain extent, and I knew the different students, and I knew all the different teams of filmmakers that were working on their own theses. And I talked about this in class a couple weeks ago. I have a competitiveness, you know, that I think a lot of other film students in my class had, and it was great. I think competitiveness is when it's healthy and when you are, you know, remaining supportive. Like you can be competitive and supportive at the same time. And I think when your class is pushing each other to, you know, you want to have the better project. I mean, making art that's better than other art is kind of a dumb, you know.
It's like a race to nowhere.
Yeah, it's a race to nowhere, absolutely. But at the same time, I mean, we're all here to grow, and we're all here to try and like improve. So thinking of it from that perspective from time to time was really valuable for me. And I think there were a lot of other people in my program that had that, again, in a very healthy way. But do you guys feel that at all in your class? I'm curious.
I would say I definitely do in regards to podcasting.
Podcasting,
where
okay.
I see my friends starting them, and of course I'm going to support them, I'm going to watch them, but once I see that, I'm like, all right, I'm going to lock in and make sure the Zicast is as good as it can be to kind of keep that healthy competition going, where, yeah, that's a kind of a great way to put it, because you're still supporting your friends and you're still going to be there for them, but at the same time, it makes you want to make your thing that much better. So I very much agree that in that regards, for me, I want to kind of, it pushes me to stay ahead of the curve, which is always good, because you always need something to motivate you. Like if you kind of get lulled to sleep, so to speak, your work's not going to be good. And I feel that with film as well, where like I see my friends making really interesting things, and it kind of pushes me to want to make something that can be as great as it possibly can, and to push different boundaries. And I'm sure you can attest to this too, Joe.
Yeah, definitely for Capstone. It is a very competitive environment, but it's healthy. We all want to help each other out. Obviously, we all want to see each other succeed. So it's really cool to see everyone kind of push each other, as you mentioned. And I'm the production designer on my Capstone group. And at one of the other classes, we met with all the other production designers and watched some successful short films to get like our different perspectives on why this was good in terms of production design and that sort of thing. And it's really eye-opening to see other people's perspectives on what makes a good film, and you kind of bounce off each other, figure out what works for you, what works for someone else, and you can get something really cool that way.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a podcast the other day, one of my favorite podcasts, The Rewatchables, and they were talking about There Will Be Blood, which by Paul Thomas Anderson in 2007, and how Tarantino he did an interview at some point where like he was speaking to like, I love that movie, but I got to get back out there and work. And then he made Inglourious Bastards, and like a lot of the, you know, top tier filmmakers, I think they have that too. I think it's kind of important to have sometimes. It keeps you in check, you know, like when you're an artist, especially in 2024 where like, you know, it's getting harder to make money and create a sustainable future for yourself. It's easy to begin to not prioritize your artistic growth because especially early on, it's not always financially beneficial to like, you know, dedicate so much time to that. So, you know, and it could go sour fast too, though. Like I've been a victim of like artist envy, scrolling on Instagram, seeing other people like create really cool stuff, and just start thinking like, you know, why am I sitting around? Why am I not doing anything? So it's definitely a double-edged sword, but even the greats are looking at other work and using that as fuel to, you know, help them achieve something amazing. So.
Yeah. There's downsides to everything. There's always those doom scrolling, but if you just always approach life with balance, that's how you kind of even things out. And that was also kind of a moment in Zicast history, because I think that's the first time a producer has ever spoken through that mic for like to add anything. So
we're making history here, I guess.
We are making history
Let's
here
go.
on the Zicast. Yeah, awesome, and that was, we took that to some really interesting places, which I didn't doubt having you here on the show. That's why I was so excited. And something else that was really interesting is that you got to do QU in LA really early on in its time here at the school. So I'd like to ask you about your experience there.
Yeah. I think me personally, QU in LA, I think that was quite possibly the most important like step in my social growth that I have ever taken. Because again, I was a commuter. I had trouble like making friends here at first, and you know, finding my lane, finding, you know, discovering who I was as an adult and not as this, you know, hotshot like kid who's, you know, it's easy to be a hotshot when your graduating class had 80 kids. QU in LA was the first time I ever went on a plane. It was the first time I had ever lived away from home, away from my family for more than a week. The most I ever did before was this program that Connecticut does. Actually, would you know about it? Boys State. It's like a thing where students from Connecticut will go to at my time at least, it was Eastern, and you would live there for a week and like run a mock government. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
That's not familiar to me. I don't know why. Maybe.
Yeah. Well,
I missed that.
That was the only time I had ever like lived away from my family. So QU in LA was filled with firsts for me. And it was just a really amazing experience to be surrounded by other communications majors and get to know people you know, more intimately and discover who I am a little bit more. My QU in LA class, we went in the summer of 2018, I think. So many amazing people that I got to meet and be friends with, and it really gave me a certain level of confidence to navigate, you know, socially around other college students and stuff. And it was I look back on that time extremely fondly. I think it was really formative for me and really important for me to develop socially through that.
Yeah, I feel like we can relate as smaller town Connecticuters going to LA and just how crazy that is. And like, what exactly were you doing in LA? And like, I know it's Andres who directs the program now. Like, kind of take me into like kind of what you guys did.
Yeah, so we had someone different running the program at my time. So I don't know who it was that, you know, currently runs it. But my internship was for a marketing company, and I didn't do much. Like, and I think that was my own fault. I don't think that QU in LA for me from the internship side was particularly fruitful. I mean, the company that I was working with was awesome. And I met some really nice people there and got some PA experience, which was definitely, you know, some of my favorite like learning time that I did there. But yeah, I think every weekend as a group we would do, you know, something in LA together. And I would imagine some of those things have remained constant with people going there now. Like we did the Hollywood sign.
Yep.
We like did that hike. I think we did a tour of Warner Brothers.
Yep. Still do that.
What were some of the other things? I mean, there are like little things that like, you know, smaller groups would do together. Like we went to Rodeo and you know, checked out the shops there and stuff. I'm not like a huge partier, so I wasn't really like, you know, going out like that or anything. But I love getting to know people and talking with people, and there were so many nights there where we were staying. They had a pool there and a hot tub there. I don't know if they're staying in the same location, but
we're at Level in downtown LA. I believe you were at a different.
We were in Marina Del Rey. And yeah, just like getting to know all these really amazing people and just having conversations with them and watching movies with them. That stuff I still look back on very fondly, and it meant a lot to me.
Yeah, it is just so incredible. And especially in regards to internships, it's so hard to find the right one. And I was really blessed that I strongly believe that I did find the right one. But QNLA is so cool because even if the internship doesn't exactly fit you, you're still going to have a great time because there's just so much to do and you learn about yourself in so many different ways. And that's really where QNLA just becomes so much extra special. And kind of moving onwards, I'd like to ask you, since you're someone who's very much a cinematographer, I'd like to ask you what you look for in crafting shots.
I mean, the cop-out answer, but the true answer is it depends on the story. You know, you're going to create, I think the best way to navigate being a cinematographer on different projects is to, you know, step one, really understand your story as much as possible, understand what the director's, you know, take on the story is and how they want to execute telling it, and let that be, you know, guiding principles in creating and crafting shots. From a more practical perspective, I think what I look for is where the light is coming from in a room naturally, to not be fighting against the current of the space, or just fighting against the space. You know, you want to augment. I think that's the easiest way to get something to look good, and it gives you, again, like a guiding motivation for where you're putting lights and where you're putting your frame. So yeah, I think once I started doing that, it really helped me begin to understand what to do with lights and what to do with the camera in a way that I didn't really know before. Like, look at the light. Just look at where the light is coming from in the room and build off of that.
It makes me think of that scene you showed us from The Fabelmans with David Lynch playing John Ford, where he's look for the horizon, and it's like this very like subtle advice that means so much to creating a film.
Yeah.
And I especially think of that with Steven Spielberg's work and like Indiana Jones, when he'd be out in the desert with the sun. Like it really it's really transferable. And I also think of like your work that you've shown us in class, and just how crisp all that looks. Like, what are some of the projects you've been able to work on as a filmmaker?
So I really want to focus a lot more after the turn of the new year into narrative work, specifically short films, because I wrote and directed my thesis film here. And it was really great, and I think it's what I wanted to do moving forward. But I've only written and directed like a couple things since. I've really fell into that like sort of cinematographer lane for a lot of creative work. But to this point, I would say for a number of years when I graduated, music videos were kind of like my bread and butter. I had worked with a company locally here that did a whole lot of work. I mean, within 2 years, I probably shot and edited, it had to have been upwards of 50 music videos, and worked on, more that were, larger sets. So I was able to, expose myself to that workflow and understand, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think music videos I've probably had the most experience with to this point. I don't really want to keep doing them though. I really want to get back into that short film lane where I'm, telling stories that are a little bit more personal to me. Because that's the stuff that I feel most proud of, and I feel most artistically satisfied in creating. So I want to do more of that.
Definitely. And I'm sure working on music videos like that and short films kind of help lead you to those narrative paths. Like Michael Bay shooting music videos back in the past, and so many directors come from that. It kind of can help you give style, like what you've been teaching us in class. And I feel like it kind of helps you to like fortify yourself in term visually and what you want in films, and then you can carry that over or transfer that over into narrative films very seamlessly.
Yeah, I think music videos are a lot of like you guys are working on your music videos right now, and I've been expressing that this is like music videos are an opportunity to break rules with intention, break the 180 rule, do some wacky compositions, move the camera in ways that, just have more fun, let yourself free more. That's something that you could do with the music video form a lot easier, I think, than in any sort of like narrative short film work. So having that experience doing a lot of those music videos where like, I'm doing like, a lot of heavy editing and, accentuating the rhythm of the song by like, chopping things up like crazy, or, just doing, some lighting design that's a little bit more dramatic or stylistic in some capacity. It's interesting because I think you're exactly right that like that stuff could inform your narrative work once you come back to it. And there are plenty of directors that, demonstrate that. But I think I really love like indie small scale stuff. Like the mumblecore movement of the early 2000s or late 2000s, that is like my bread and butter in a lot of ways, where like those are the type of stories I want to tell. I think they're producible. They play well with working in an indie environment, like Connecticut. And I don't know how much the music video stuff lends itself to telling those stories, which is okay. Like I think I would hope that I'm someone who can kind of have this chameleonic approach to my work where, I have one style for one thing and the style completely changes when I'm telling this story. I think Paul Schrader kind of comes to mind for this. And I'm sure there are other directors that are really great at, changing their style depending on the story. But you watch Taxi Driver and First Reformed, these dark, brooding films that are just like oozing with intensity. And then his most recent film, Master Gardener, was so tender and and in terms of the story being told, but also like the camera movement, a lot of it was steady cam. It's just the camera's just kind of like floating throughout the scenes, and it's such a stylistic departure from his other films in a lot of ways. And I love that. Like, I really want to, I want to be that type of filmmaker that's just like doing whatever supports whatever story I'm telling, you know? And there's through lines. There's definitely thematic through lines. His voice as a writer is still present in Master Gardener, but it's just taking this completely different approach to telling that story.
Yeah. I remember you noting that in class that you want that your favorite directors have that chameleonic quality. We were talking about Denis Villeneuve in this regard. I think Christopher Nolan is starting to get into this a little bit, like with Oppenheimer, how different that is, like a very social networky, dialogue-heavy film versus some of his other work that's more kind of bigger sci-fi Hollywood films. So I very much do that, and that's one of my goals as well, is to be chameleonic. Like, I do comedy skits for Quinnipiac tonight, and then I do like Push that Joe shot for me or helped shoot with me. In your class, that's more serious, is a bit more grounded. So I try to accomplish that as well. And I also think to some things I've learned in writing in regards to kind of what you spoke about with music videos is that if you know a rule, you can break it. And I feel like that applies to film, where if you understand the 180 rules and how you should shoot things, you can break that for artistic intent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of my favorite 180-degree rule breaks is in The Shining, where there's this element in the story of Jack Torrance, the Jack Nicholson character, having lived a past life as the former hotel manager of the I forget the name of the inn, but so he meets the like ghost of this former manager in the bathroom, and it does this 180-degree cut where they're swapping positions. It's they're swapping positions, but they're like still there, and it's evoking that perhaps they are the same person, you know. Breaking it with intention, you know. There's always ways to do it, but it's always a good idea to know them first and abide by them first.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's always something very elegant about mirror shots if you do them right, I feel. And I'm really excited to get into some of your favorite movies as we continue onwards. But to kind of get to learn more about you, I'd like to ask you, what are some things that people don't know about you, like fun facts?
Fun facts. Well, I guess the audience is current students, right? And like people that you're going to school with. That's who's listening to this.
That would be the majority. So
what would they not know about me through my class and and what I talk about? I mean, I have a lot of interests that, you know, again, like coming from an artistic family, you know, I'm a really big hip hop head. Not as much as I used to be. When I was in college, I listened to a ton of music and a ton of hip hop. I have, you know, kind of a very selective obsession with like certain video games. Like I'm not a straight up gamer or anything, but I mean, I love The Last of Us. I love Quantic Dream video games. So those are the Telltale type video games.
Very narrative driven.
Narrative driven games where you make decisions and it kind of branches off into like telling different narratives. I think that utilizes the form of video games in a way that makes, you know, it's such a unique art form that like it can't really be replicated in any other sort of art forms. F-Zero GX, Captain Falcon, that's that was I played that when I was in like first grade, and I still play it. I'm pretty good at it. Pretty good at Guitar Hero.
Iconic.
Embarrassingly good at Guitar Hero, I should say. You know, the type of guy who like plays it at a party, and it's just like,
it's a flag.
How much time have you spent you know, that's what's going on in
Yeah.
people's heads. No one thinks it's cool. Everyone's just like,
I think
"All
it's
right."
cool. Like, if I did that, I'd probably get like carpal tunnel if I was trying to hit
Yeah.
the keys that hard. But I mean, that's an iconic game
It
from
is.
our childhood.
It totally is.
That and like the Tony Hawk skateboarding games.
Yep.
Those are
yep.
the same category for me.
Yeah, those are up there too. I'm a baseball nerd. I still play baseball. I think I've found in my adulthood that I like baseball more than basketball, even though in high school it was probably reversed. But I love baseball. I think there are so many. Ken Burns has this 9-volume documentary on baseball
that you've shown us. Yeah.
and I get baseball fever like every March once spring rolls around, and I end up watching like a huge chunk of that. So I'm trying to think what else is I love calzones. Calzones are my favorite food. I don't know. Is there anything else to that people might not know about me? I'm very introverted. I don't know if that is something that students may put together right away from a professor, because it's your job to stand in front of them and talk to them and talk with them. But I love it. I love getting to know people. I love talking with people and forming connections and relationships. Like that's one of my favorite things about living and embracing living. But I get so tired from it.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. Like introversion really is an extroversion. That question of where you land on the spectrum. It's really just about what sucks your energy away and what gives your energy back. And I am so exhausted after parties. I'm so exhausted after class. Like I gotta nap. As much as I love it, I gotta take a nap after.
Yeah. I get drained after Zicast. That's what drains me as an introvert myself, and that what helps me to notice it. Like I've noticed it in you, so I always like to have like a sensitivity towards introverts, because I understand how draining it can be to like kind of have to constantly interact with people and have that kind of drain your energy. But moving onwards, I'd like to ask you, what's one thing you love and one thing you strongly dislike?
I think, I'm trying to think of something that we haven't covered already for like what I love. I guess to branch off of what I was just sharing about, you know, really appreciating relationships and getting to know people and forming connections with people. I love my family. I'm definitely a family man. I have 3 brothers. My mom passed away in 2016, which I think is also, you know, part of that story of like my college experience and, you know, branching away to QU in LA and having that be like so formative for me. I was kind of in a vulnerable place at the time. I think having experienced trauma with people you love, and recognizing that people experience that trauma in different ways, and learning how to be there for people and learning how to love is invaluable. And you carry that with how you conduct yourself every day in every space you walk into. So, you know, family is great for that reason. You know, it teaches you how to love and how to be a better person. I mean, the same thing goes for I'm recently engaged, and my relationship with my fiance has done exactly that. And that's family, you know? So, so that's something I love, and now something I dislike. What's something you dislike, Ryan?
What's something I dislike? One thing, that's very interesting. I don't like when people talk bad about other people, especially if it's someone they would say they like. I feel like it makes me think you do that to me. And on a similar vein, it's people who are judgmental as
Sure.
well. I would say those are two things I dislike, and negativity when people complain. Because I feel like it's a tough quality to have, because there's certain things in life you just can't control, and there's also things in life you could put in the effort to fix. So if I had like three things to narrow it down, those would be three things I'd say I dislike.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I'm with you on all of those. I think what I pride myself on is being someone who's wearing your heart on your sleeve, I guess, is kind of a cheesy way of putting it, but I think I like to leverage the fact that I am, a genuine and open person, to create spaces for other people when I'm getting to know them, to allow them to like share stuff about themselves and make them feel comfortable sharing that stuff with me, because that's the good stuff. That's how you really are learning more about life and learning more about other people, learning more about yourself. It's an extension of what I feel when I'm watching a movie or being moved by any sort of music. It's just being aware of the human condition in ways that are outside of you. So I love to, kind of put that out there when I'm meeting someone, is, share a little bit about me, not be overbearing about it. And isn't there a term for that when you're
trauma dumping?
You try to navigate social spaces with an awareness, but
read the room, like you've said.
You read the room, but there are times when I do that, and it's the message is sent, but it's not received, and it's they're over there doing their own thing. So I guess like something that I tend to dislike or gravitate away from is when people have walls up that kind of never go down. Like, I think it's totally understandable when you meet someone for the first time, or when you're getting to know someone, that we all have masks. I have a mask, even though I'm talking about being genuine and all that sort of stuff. Like, I'm going to present myself a certain way. But if I'm spending more time with someone and the walls aren't going down, and there isn't a certain level of vulnerability or like emotional intelligence or awareness, I tend to kind of, just step away. I don't think I'll form a particularly like strong connection with that person without that.
That's very telling, and then that's something I try to accomplish here on this show, is kind of getting to know people on that level. And that's like the struggle of this show, is trying to keep it like entertaining with like topics about people, like about their work, but also trying to get to know them on a level that's very genuine. So that's like the eternal struggle of like creating content for this show. And I appreciate you sharing all of that. And I think it leads us very well into kind of projecting forward. So like, what are some of your hopes and dreams professionally or in general?
Like I said, I'm a family man. I want a family. I want to do that when it's financially responsible to do so.
Which is tough, the way things have been.
Yeah, which is tough. I mean, my fiance is going back to school for the next 3 years. We actually met in the film program here, and we started dating. We took that jump right when we graduated, and it was kind of my first relationship, like my first serious relationship. And I don't know, when I was in college, I don't think I was ready for something like that. So I kind of kept an arm's distance. And then one of my closest friends that I made here in the film program that was working on my thesis film with me, it was just like do it, just like go for it. And that was a really he kind of convinced me, and I always tell him that he did, and he doesn't really like believe it because it was such like a passive remark. But it did kind of make me just think like, all right, let me just like go for it. And then, 6 years later, it's my fiance. That was a complete diversion from what we were talking about, but I feel like it's part of my Quinnipiac story,
Yeah.
and so I feel like I needed
It's part
to
of your
mention
story, which is very poignant.
So hopes and dreams, to start a family with her. I think professionally, I want to find my audience with the work that I create, and I feel like the internet's the way to do that. Like, I don't know how feasible it is necessarily to put all of your stock into like film festivals and then finding distribution and doing all of that sort of stuff. Long. Yeah, I mean, I think they're both hard. Like that's again like one of the natural struggles of being an artist is finding your audience. But that's certainly one goal that I have is to find the people who are interested in the type of stories that I want to tell and the work that I'm creating, and create a cycle. Art is meant to be consumed and discussed after and experienced, and when we're as early in our careers as we are, you likely don't have that audience right away, so it's difficult, I think, to keep going without that cycle. You want to reach a point where you are making stuff and people are engaging with the work that you're making. So that's my general goal. Like I just want to start making stuff that has an audience in some capacity. Those are kind of the two goals, I would say, the two prominent goals in my life.
Yeah, and Joe can speak to this because he was a part of a film that got how many views on YouTube? That we talked about?
It's now at 57,000.
57,000.
Oh, wow.
Called The Ripple, that we talked about on our episode. That it very much shows that if you want to make something, you could put it out on YouTube, which takes like 5 minutes to upload a video, and so many people, if it hits the right audience, so many people can see it and appreciate it.
Did you what was your involvement in that?
So I was I was acting in it, and then so it was a group of 4 of us, my friends Matt, Jack, Ben, and me. I was acting, I did the cinematography, and then I also did the editing for it. But it was just a group effort, which is what you kind of have to do with that small of a group. But it was really fun.
Totally. How did it feel to like have? I'm sure I'm repeating episode 30, whatever content,
36,
episode 36. But I'm curious, like, how did that feel to find an audience?
It was so earlier that summer. We also made another video where it was just us rock climbing, and that got somehow like 2,000 views, and we just were like, "That's possible." But then when we uploaded a Ripple, it initially got I think 1,000, and we were stunned by that. But we also looked at the comments, and all of them were like people in their 40s, 50s, kind of reminiscing about their childhood, and because that's what the movie's about, is like high school, graduating, all that sort of stuff. And once we found that niche, it just blew up from there. So you just gotta kind of appeal to that.
So cool. I mean, that's the other thing about finding an audience that makes me a little bit more optimistic about the internet is like, the algorithms are kind of a double-edged sword. Like they help people find content that is meaningful to them. I mean, that's a gross overgeneralization. There's so much you could talk about with how algorithms are influencing the stuff we consume and the stuff we create. But yeah, there are positive stories out there about that, absolutely. And I think that's a really strong testament to it.
Yeah, just make stuff. I feel like that's the simplest way to put it. And I also like what you talked about, you and your fiance, and kind of going over that journey and how jumping in, how rewarding that was. And I think that's a great message to young people who might be very confused in this regard. And I want to ask you like a fun side question. Like, if you had to compare your relationship with your fiance to one romance movie, what would it be?
Oh man, what an awesome question.
'Cause I know you have such a great like catalog of films. I feel like you could pull.
Maybe we come back to this one because
Okay.
I know you want to ask me later about favorite movies generally, and that
Okay.
might help spark the answer.
Yeah, because so many great romance movies end bad, so it's hard to find the happy ever after.
Yeah.
That's also very good,
Yeah.
and so that leads us perfectly into my final question, which are some of your favorite movies.
Okay.
So we can just dive right into that.
I'm gonna pull up my Letterboxd.
Yeah, he's got the receipts.
My top 4 favorites on Letterboxd are Do the Right Thing, Before Sunrise, the whole Before trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of them. Don't know if there's a correlation necessarily with me and Caitlin though with those. Lost in Translation, and Space Jam.
Yeah.
I kind of like to always mention Space Jam as one of my favorite movies, partly just to troll, but like genuinely as well. Maybe I just go and look through some of my 5 stars.
Yeah. You have a very Before trilogy vibe, I would say.
In what way?
I feel like you have like the spirit of those kinds of movies, a very, very kind of, I don't know if wholesome's the word, like very wholesome, kind of humble kind of spirit.
Yeah.
If that's a way to put it. It's hard to like, it's a very intangible thing.
No,
sometimes.
and those are the kinds of movies I think I want to make and stories I want to tell a lot of
like
the
very
time.
warm. I think warm's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, warm. An element of like, something like nostalgic about them, Yeah, I'm very happy you said that because I think that's the goal that I have for a lot of the work that I create is, to live in that space a lot of the time.
Very much so. Yeah, I didn't prep you for the romance movie question. That just kind of came into my head. So
yeah,
I didn't mean to.
No, it's an amazing question, and I want to find an answer for it, but I also don't want to kill all the time, thinking of it. But I'm just gonna rapid fire some 5 stars that I've given. So we got Parasite, La La Land, Pulp Fiction, Whiplash, Midsummer, Poor Things, Eternal Sunshine, Spirited Away, The Shining, Silence of the Lambs, Kill Bill, Her, Taxi Driver, Good Will Hunting, Past Lives, Star Wars, Us, Goodfellas, Aftersun, 2001, Uncut Gems, Requiem, Empire Strikes Back, Home Alone, Marriage Story, Princess Mononoke, Juno, Ex Machina, There Will Be Blood, Fargo, Mulholland Drive, Birdman, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Eyes Wide Shut, The Florida Project, Black Klansman, The Shape of Water, In the Mood for Love, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Licorice Pizza, Before Sunset, Casablanca, The Fabelmans, It Follows, Elf, It's a Wonderful Life, Eraserhead, Persona, 8th Grade, Before Midnight, The Iron Giant, The Graduate, Marcel the Shell, The Master, Neon Genesis Evangelion, The End of Evangelion, Waves, King of Comedy, The Tree of Life, Triple R, Captain Fantastic, Verse Reform, Silence. Oh, okay, there's way more. I thought I was going to end the 5 stars, but I still have like a lot to go.
Let me recite those back to you.
So that's an idea of movies that I love.
Yeah. That's the most movies someone has ever given. So now we get like the entire scope.
Yeah.
Of what you like. And is there any romance movie you think you could give? No? Even like a rom-com? Like a silly one?
I'm thinking too, like, literally in terms of like the narrative. I'm trying to think of like a film I've seen about like college students that graduate and then sort of find each other after. But yeah, I would love to have an answer, but I just can't think of one right now.
You'll probably think of it 5 minutes after you leave the
probably
studio.
will. That's exactly what's going to happen.
So we'll have a topic for next class, but
Yeah.
Overall, Professor Bisaccia, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, I know you've been an enjoyer of the show for a while, and I'm so happy to have you on. And I knew you were going to be a great guest because, of course, you're so well versed. And it's been so great having you as a professor now in 2 different semesters because, of course, your perspective being a student is so great. But just getting to learn from you, the way that you teach is it's so engaging, but it's also so relaxed. And I feel like I've just learned so much, and probably the most rewarding thing I've had as a film minor in terms of like academically is being in your courses. So I very much
that's
appreciate.
so nice. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Of course, and having these experiences. I'm so excited for the rest of the semester and to keep learning and collaborating with you. So thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you for saying all that.
Of course.
That really means a lot to me. So thanks for saying
I'm
that.
glad. And is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we wrap things up here?
I'm here. Say hi if you see me. I'm a cool guy. I'm a fun guy. Shout out Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
And yeah, best of luck to all the film students that may be watching this on their future endeavors. It doesn't have to be me, but find professors that you connect with and form a personal relationship with them. Ask them about the projects you're working on. Ask for advice from them as often as you can. That has been the gift that keeps on giving for me personally, is finding mentors and learning from them. So that's probably the most important piece of advice I would want to relay.
And have them on your podcasts.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a great way to wrap things up. So thank you again. And as always, this is Ryan Zicast with the Zicast, where everyone has a story. Signing off. Thank you so much for watching.